stand on your own feet, basically meaning don't depend on anyone. What would you recommend for the students or the young guys and girls that are in their junior, senior year now?
Go live in another city for like a year or two. You really need to push yourself, even for a year, out of the nest just to become this independent person and show up for our society and our community.
On today's episode, we're going to talk about life in our 20s and how it's shifted us into the women that we are today.
I want to speak about more of the independence that I don't know if I know your story, so I'm very curious to hear how it was
Sure.
for you. For me, it was just about the independence in my 20s, or actually 18, is when I actually moved out into another country and just lived on my own for school, and what it taught me and how it molded me into who I am today. And I think there's this big cultural stigma in terms of, oh, this person doesn't live at home with her parents or whatever it is, or his
Yeah.
parents. It's like haram, or it's not like good. Like it's socially looked down upon. But when you take a minute and think about the good that comes out of it, I'm going to go back to my story in terms of before I moved out, I was very, very, very lazy. I had a mom who spoiled me a lot. Like she cooked, she cleaned, whatever. Like I barely did any of that stuff. I was very I was just like a
Spoiled.
princess. Yeah, I was a
Yeah,
princess.
yeah,
Everything was
yeah.
handed to me. But on the other hand, I was very OCD, very organized, very I was clean, but I was just very lazy to get things done. When I did move out, I didn't say move out, but when I went to school, I moved to Canada and I lived there for 3 years by myself.
This is your undergrad?
Yes.
Okay.
And the fact that I had my own apartment, the fact that I had to learn how to pay my own bills, mind you, I wasn't working, but I still had to understand, like, okay, bills are due. I need to pay it by this date.
Yeah.
The fact that I had to, even find an apartment, figure out how the lease works, trying to balance not only school, but just how to feed myself and get my groceries and just figure out transportation. There's just so many lessons learned when you live on your own that you don't realize when you're at home when everything's being done for you.
I
So
take it for granted, right?
you do, and
You
it's
get
just
so used to it.
you do, and I feel like if you go straight from there to marriage, it's a very hard transition because you haven't learned that independence. And sometimes when you learn to take care of yourself, that's when you learn how to be a good partner, right?
Mm.
So I would say for both men and women, if they've had that independence in them in terms of living on their own, because even my husband, before we were married, he lived in Savannah for 4 years. And he learned independence, just learning how to pick up after himself and just cleaning and just having to be able to make meals and all that
Laundry
stuff,
and
everything.
all of that, yeah.
So, you're not relying on someone else doing it for you. You know how to do it yourself, and now you know how to be a partner. And I think that's what kind of makes us work too, is we've both been able to experience independence separately,
Mm-hmm.
living on our own. That when we came together, we kind of knew, like, okay, this person's busy. I know how to pick up that slack, and the same thing with
Right.
him. So we kind of worked, alhamdulillah, really well together as partners. So when I say this, I know there are other moms out there that are scared to let their children go. But even if it's for like a year, like I say this about my own kids, like I want them, as much as I don't want them to leave me, I still want them to have at least a year, if not more, just on their own, discovering who they are. Inshallah, and I always pray, and I'm sure my mom did too, that we stay on the right path.
Yeah.
You don't get influenced to go any which way, but your main purpose is to learn how to be independent. I was very grateful that I had amazing, amazing friends in Canada. They were Muslim. Like we all got together. So never did anything, never did clubbing, no partying, like no smoking, whatever. Like alhamdulillah, like Allah had guided me to the right group of friends
Yeah.
to stay within the deen. But going back to, don't be afraid to let the baby bird fly a little bit because they've got to get their wings.
Don't be afraid to let them fail.
Yeah.
Failure is what teaches you your biggest lessons.
And yeah, so for me, it was moving to Canada that really helped, because when I came back, I was on top of everything. Like my mom was to a point where she was scared of touching any of my things because she didn't want me to be upset if something wasn't in the right place or whatever it is. But the amount of independence that I came back with, I was able to take care of her. I knew how to flip the script in that sense. So I know in your 20s, tell me your story of where you were in terms of college, and did you live on your own?
I did.
Okay,
Yeah,
so tell
I
me.
did. Yeah. So I love your story. So thank you so much for sharing that. I have a couple of questions back too. Um, but I will say, yeah, in my 20s, life in my 20s was fun. Life in my 20s was it was fun, chaotic, and it was a lot of work. I'm going to touch on the work part.
Mm.
When I say work, I mean literal work. So I was in my let's see, I was in my third year in my bachelor's, and in my third year, by this time, I was living on my own in California. And if anybody knows SoCal, it is expensive. It is very, very expensive. But I've always had this mindset that if I work hard for it, I can achieve anything, right? And my mom, at a very young age, she instilled it in all of us and all, my other two siblings stand on your own feet. Basically meaning don't depend on anyone, right? Get your education. Like she's very, very, my whole family is very big on education.
Mhm.
And alhamdulillah, I have my bachelor's. But in my third year of college, I was in for a shock. And although I worked in high school at 14 and I also worked in college, it was always like a part time gig. I worked at Victoria's Secret, Bath and Body, Guess. Well, it wasn't until my third year in college where I actually picked up a responsible type of a job. So I started working in a telecommunications company. Granted, I was supposed to be scheduled for only 28 hours, but sometimes we were scheduled for 32 hours. So I had 18 units that I was taking, between 18 to 20 units I was taking in school. I was doing about 28 to 32 hours a week. I was trying to maintain a social circle, and the social circle, which I am not recommending to anyone. Some of them we have definitely grown apart. We don't stay in touch anymore, but there are some that I definitely stay in touch with till this day, which is beautiful. But I will say I was so concerned on I'm definitely a people pleaser back then I was, right? So making sure that I don't let my family down, making sure I don't let myself down and let my friends down. I was so big on friends that I found myself absolutely, like, sleepless. Sadly, I used to drink Starbucks, but I used to take quads, so that is, for those who are not familiar, caramel macchiatos. I would take 4 shots of espresso in those drinks, and I would drink that every single day that I had school. So that was usually, like, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So it was pretty bad, and then I'd go to work in the evening, and during that time, when I talk about responsibility, I was not only living on my own with my own actually, excuse me, my third year in college, I did have a roommate, and I call her till this day. We still call each other roomies. Till this day, it's so cute. So she has 2 lovely daughters right now, mashallah. So we still keep in touch. And during this time, she was my roommate. We had a very healthy, cordial relationship, but there were definitely some tough times, like growing pains. So not only did both of us, like, we had to learn to understand each other, so navigating relationships, but a good friend who's also now become your partner in crime, and now you're having to share duties. This was a big game changer for me because there were times where my roomie at that time, she and I would have to figure out, are you taking out the trash? Oh, why didn't you take out the trash? Like, there were small little things that we would pick up on each other. And I kid you not, I remember in those moments thinking, oh my God, is this what it's like to be married? I
I
swear.
mean, it is.
I swear.
Thank
And you know what? It was such an awesome time because we were the best of friends. We went to each other's events. We were always supporting each other, and we had like a small group of friends. All of us. We were spiritually inclined with each other, and they were not even Muslim friends, and that's okay. But even though they weren't Muslim friends, they were very good people in their values, in their character, and overall their morals and ethics like aligned with mine and my family. So it was very easy to like get along, like very family oriented girls too. So anyways, during that time and period of my third year in college, then I finally graduated from college on my fourth year. By the time all that was done, not only was I paying my cell phone bill, but paying bills, right? Utility bills. The utility bills was a big game changer. I had no idea that water bills can be so expensive. My
Tell my
perhaps
kids.
1 hour of showers don't need to be in place. So, anyways, yeah, my roommate and I, we figured those out. We learned how to manage our funds even more. But like the shared responsibilities really took it up a notch for me to know the type of young lady that I was growing into.
Mhm.
And then it also helped me to understand like the foundation of marriage, because marriage, at the end of the day, you don't want to be roommates in marriage. Let's
No.
halas, like that's not what I'm saying. But we want to have a partnership, and a partnership in a marriage that is healthy is being able to make each other's lives easier, right? So, having that your husband was also able to be independent and work on his own things at a young age,
Mhm.
having that sense of, hey, you know what? I have no one else to count on but myself. I've got to figure this out. Figure it out mentality is not spoken about enough. So, life is not going to always be easy, but you've got to go through those hardships to understand the good moments in life. So, for me personally, yeah, 20s was a fun ride. It was chaotic. I worked a lot. My old telecom boss at that time, that manager would tell you, Ray Newman never took her vacation. And that was a big mistake. I got PTO, but it would expire because I wasn't using it. So it exhausted like 140 hours.
Wow.
So I didn't go on vacation for 3 years, which is
Oh
pretty
my
bad.
gosh.
That's my only regret. There you go. It's my only regret, not solo traveling young and not taking more time off.
Yeah. So going back to, the whole purpose of this episode is if you're a mom, understand that part of raising your children is teaching them to be independent enough to take care of others. Because, unfortunately, a lot of the arguments that happen after marriage is just, people not being able to be a true partnership. And I don't want to tie this back to marriage. Not a lot of people, in these times choose to get married, but they will eventually be caretakers, whether, the children are taking care of their parents when they're
Right.
older, or their spouse, or their children, whatever it is. Learning that basic fundamental of independence is what's going to really elevate them in terms of how they show up for whatever relationship that
Yeah,
they
for
need to be in.
society.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
society as well.
Sure.
So whether you have a son or a daughter, or if you're the son or the daughter, don't be afraid to fly out the nest, because the amount of responsibilities that you will not learn living at home under a roof that's being done for you.
Mhm.
I know so many, even just, personally, I have like family that's moved out. And, I know two people now that have moved out, lived on their own, and moms were scared. But when they come back home, I see such a big difference in how they show up for the family, because now they are pitching in and they're doing the cook. And these are two men that I know in my lives. They are doing the cooking, they are doing the cleaning, and like the moms are not having to touch anything at all anymore.
Mashallah.
So
So they
imagine.
did have a chance to live on their
They
own.
did, and this
Okay.
is what I'm saying is the change, because before that, they weren't doing any of that stuff. They were like me,
Yeah.
taking advantage of everything that's being done. But then once they moved out and they've learned all these dynamics that they needed to learn, and they moved back home, these men are taking care of their mothers. So imagine what they're going to be doing when they're married to their wives, or,
Yeah.
if they choose not to be, like, just any kind of relationship that they show up in. And the same goes for the women. When they go out and they live on their own, they're able to understand finances. They're able to, understand, like, just paying bills, or just
Right.
even cooking. Like, it's not a woman's job to cook, but it might be something that they're not interested in, but they know how to start.
Right.
These are basic life skills that, when you're home with your parents, you don't feel the need to, like, really learn them, because it's taken care of.
Right.
So you really need to push yourself, even for a year, out of the nest, just to become this independent person and show up for our society and our community in a very different way.
Yes, and I want to touch on one more thing too. So I love that you explained that so thoroughly, because I think when we talk about having a sense of like responsibility that we show up for our children, but also for our children to show up for society, you've got to think as they're growing into fatherhood and motherhood, they are going to be balancing, inshallah they have children, but they're balancing themselves, their own independence, right? So just because you become married doesn't mean that you can't have some time for yourself. Like self care is important too. So just to bring that into this conversation, a
Mhm.
man should still be able to have some time for his own, right? Like if he wants to hang out with his friends, the wife is aware and it's something that's mutual. Maybe all the friends know each other, whatever it is, and vice versa. There has to be some girl times too,
Yeah.
because we've definitely had that. So it's good to have that type of a balance, because what that does is it also helps to show up, and it shows up differently in a partnership, like towards marriage. Because imagine if I'm the husband and Sonia is the wife, if she wants to have a girls' day, I don't need her to cook me a full meal before she goes out. Because traditionally that is what's expected. And that would be nice. And there are some women that do that. Hey, kudos to you, mashallah.
Mhm.
But for the girls that are also working and in this society, we've talked about in other episodes, right? Depending on socioeconomic changes, if a woman and a man have decided, Islamically or non Islamically, right, they want to help contribute financially 50-50, 70-30, whatever you want to call it. Do not get into our inboxes talking about, can't believe you talked about 50-50.
Yeah.
But we're being realistic, right? Times have changed a lot. And if you are both working, then both should be able to cook and be independent on their own to help each other with the workload, right? Again, like the biggest emphasis on our episode today is really living in our 20s and what it has learned, what we have learned, and how it's shaped us to be today.
Mhm.
So we're hoping that we hear from all of you, but we're also hoping that, you know, we shared some content that really helps to elevate where you see your life and how things can shift for you, where you see yourself going into college, or even if it's something like locally. You know, I was going to ask you this question. So I know a ton of folks that are going to GSU, and actually GSU, KSU, and Georgia Tech. So, like, what would you recommend for the students, for the young guys and girls that are in their junior, senior year now, and they're thinking about, inshallah, getting married, but they're still commuting back and forth to mom and dad?
I mean, like, they're living at home and going to school? Yeah,
Hmm.
that's a tough one, and I think, you know,
But
just
tell me, I'm gonna kind of push you on
yeah,
this.
yeah.
Why is it tough?
It's tough in the sense because the whole household kinda has to agree with it. You know, the parents have to be okay with it, and the child has to be okay with it. I know in my certain situation that I know of a family member, the son was a little afraid. The parents was okay with
The
them
son
going.
was afraid.
So the son was afraid because he was so used to mom and dad taking care of everything, and the son was afraid because he didn't know, like, "Okay, I don't know how to do maintenance, I don't know how to cook, I don't know how to do this and that." So he was very afraid, and this was after college too, mind you.
Wow, okay.
He was afraid to leave the nest because he doesn't know how to live the life. But after a lot of coaching and helping, I'm like, you know, everybody's a phone call away, a drive away, whatever it is. You need to do this for your future. You know, whether it's you on your own, whether it's you and a spouse, whatever it is, this is going to change you. So after a lot of conversations, he decided to make the leap and he bought his first home.
That's
Mind
amazing.
you, he's not far from parents. He's like 15, 20 minutes away. But the amount of independence that I've seen in him, the maturity, like whenever I see him now, he's home
Mashallah.
helping in such a different level. You know, before when he was living at home, you would barely see him because he'd
Mhm.
be in his room gaming or whatever it is. Like you barely come out to help. But now when he's home with parents, he's there helping with the dishes, helping to put away things. Like, you know, it's such
That's
a
so huge
different
because our
level.
parents become older, right? Like,
Yeah.
they can't forever be our
Right.
caretaker, you know? So that's great.
So, like, to your question, doesn't matter, even if you're in your senior, you know, even if you've already graduated, take time off, find yourself a place to live. And I know it's hard for mom and dad to let you go. Trust me, I know that because I'm thinking about my kids and leaving, but I'm hoping that once they get a year or 2, you know, even if you just go abroad, go live in another city for like a year or 2, come back home so that parents are happy or live close, whatever it is, but just take that time. Just give yourself 1 year at least.
Right.
You know, get an apartment close by or go abroad and just go travel for a little bit and just understand the dynamics of living on your own and gaining that independence. And this is so important for you to be able to live the rest of your life in peace and harmony with just whoever you're with, you
Right.
know? So that's my advice. Is just take that 1 year. It doesn't matter if it's your freshman year, if it's, you know, after you graduate, whatever it is, just take at least 1 year, if not more, to at least learn that level of, you know, how to elevate yourself.
I love that. So we've talked about, you know, living in our 20s and, you know, what we have learned and how it's shaped us to be the women that we are today. We want to hear from all of you. So share with us, send us private DMs if you like, or you can comment below. But we also want to know, like, if there's something that is not just concerning to you all from a topic perspective, but share with us, like, what are some concerns or some hot topics that you all want to hear us discuss from not just the millennial lens, but we also want to hear from the Gen Z's lens too. And I think it's really important because I actually have a couple of friends that are in their mid 30s and they got married very young. Actually, late 30s, excuse me. They're in their late 30s, got married very young. One of them has a daughter that's in college, in her second year in college, and another one that is about to graduate high school this coming year. So I want to hear from all of you, and I'm sure you may have some instances too, how that balance is between the mother and daughter, right? And I think from genetically speaking too, you see so many moms and daughters, have similar styles. They're in the same era in life. And, I know we've talked about it with divorces too. There's some single moms that are raising teenage kids or college students, right? How is it? We want to hear from all of you. Our kids are quite young, so it's a different perspective that we're giving, but we'd love to hear from all of you as well.